Good evening, friends, and welcome to another episode of Kirby Russia, where Tim Kirby, an American who's worked in the Russian media for more than a decade and lived here for 2 decades, tells you about how the world looks from within a Russian perspective. However, today we have a little bit more of a perspective of foreign people in Russia, because recently I was asked a few times by people how they can integrate into Russian society. And you know what, guys? I love when I get a question that I don't get often. As a foreign person living in Russia, I will be asked, the amount of times this is happening seems to be less and less. But, just if you start living here, the amount of times you'll be asked, hey, why'd you move to Russia? Will drive you insane. And it sucks answering the same questions over and over again. I'm not an elementary school teacher. Maybe elementary school teachers enjoy that. But then again, they're being asked by a new group of students every year. I don't know, but I don't like it. And whenever I do get questions that are sort of new or fresh, or I feel like I haven't answered 50 million times, I'm always excited. Today's also been quite a crappy day. It has been quite an awful day. Maybe I'll explain why in the near future, but I don't feel the necessity to do so now. Don't worry, the American village is fine. So our big topic is about integrating into Russia. It's a topic, again, that I really didn't think too much about, and I want to provide people some good answers, okay? As someone already posted, like, on our channel, which is, by the way, if you're watching live right now, on Telegram, it's Tim Kirby Russia Hardcore. That's the Telegram channel. Oops, on the wrong monitor. That's my the Telegram channel, where if you basically comment on anything, I'll see it, and it goes to a place that's called the chat. So let me update there, and so anywhere in Tim Kirby Rush Hardcore you comment, and I'll see it. If you're watching this on YouTube or somewhere else, well, that means it's already not live. So, for the beginning, I'll do my usual, the spiel, and then we'll take calls and answer questions and all that. So, the one thing that I don't want to talk about too much is learning the language. That's kind of obvious, How do you integrate into a society where you don't speak the language? You learn the language. That's kind of obvious. But the one thing I would say is that I think it really appears to a lot of people, like someone I was just talking to today kind of mentioned how with Russia, it's like a catch-22. Because the best way to learn the Russian language is through immersion, of actually like living here or having a job here or doing something here. And then it sort of forces you to learn the language. But, kind of to get here and be here, you kind of have to know the language. And it's that kind of catch-22, which is kind of frustrating. But I think in some ways, some of the stuff we'll talk about how to integrate you in a Russian society can kind of help you break through that initial barrier. And I'll explain why later. But anyways, the most obvious one is the language. But again, how exactly do you go about learning the language when you don't have a lot of contact with people? So let me tell you then one way to integrate in a Russian society that I think is probably the strongest one. We'll start off strong, and you might not expect it, but number one is have kids. Because, as soon as your kids are, after the sort of where they're like little infants, they're sort of toddler age, and they start to go outside into the world, essentially, as a parent, you're going to be spending a lot of time on playgrounds and stuff. And your little kids, I think as you get older, you're like the amount of interests that that a person has, they become more diverse. And over time, it becomes kind of maybe harder to make friends as an adult, or you kind of have less connection to people, or you could only sort of unite around very specific interests that you already have. But with like little kids, I don't know, they seem pretty similar, and they're kind of all pretty happy to play with each other. Half of them like cars and the other half like dinosaurs, and that's good enough, for them to sort of interact. So a really good way to integrate in Russian society is have kids here, because as soon as your kids start to interact with other children, well, then you're going to start talking to their parents, right? And then that's when you have the whole thing of being invited to, kid number two has a friend, and it's the friend's birthday. So that's when you're actually going to get invited to some, kid's birthday party. And obviously in Russia, a 2-year-old doesn't really have a fantastic appreciation for what the heck their own birthday is. All they know is they're having a nice time, they're getting presents, and I think the holiday is really for the parents. You know what I mean? Or especially like a 1-year-old's first birthday, that's definitely a holiday for the parents. Then when they're 3, 4, 5, 6, then it's about the kid. But essentially, when you have kids, that's when you're going to start to get invited into all these like different social events, or your kid wants to go to some club, or your kids are going to be on the playground with other kids, and you're just going to be stuck sitting there watching them, or like me, helping them go up the slide over and over and over again for a few years of your life. And during that time, even for people like me, because remember, guys, this advice is coming from someone who's very introverted. I know it might not seem that way because I'm good at speaking. Because usually people assume if you're good at speaking, then must mean you're an extrovert. But no, friends, you can be an introvert, and I'm talking about being good at speaking. I can't even pronounce basic words. But have a good speaking manner about you, and be a good orator and give a great speech, even if you're a hardcore introvert. Most radio hosts are like that. The guys I worked with when I worked in the radio in Russia were sort of all that way for the most part. And people like Howard Stern, for example, who's probably the most famous radio DJ in American history, is actually quite introverted. So there you go. You can speak well and really like being left alone. But anyways, so yeah, I would say number one is have kids. That will completely integrate you into society. Oh, and after the sort of like toddler playground period, well, there becomes the school period. And the school period, again, it's more kids have their birthday, or there's this event or that event, and then that's going to make you talk to the parents. And obviously the parents are going to be like, really, you came from Ireland? Really, you came from France? Really, you came from Australia? Wherever the hell ever. And people are going to be possibly curious about you and your life and all that. And so really the number one way that I think where I've gotten the most integration into Russian society, and again, being invited into people's apartments or homes, being invited to do this, that, or the other, has been really through the kids. So I think that that's probably number one. So again, these people that have been asking me about this recently, especially the first person who brought it up like a week ago, having kids. Now, that one might be a little bit difficult because you could say, Tim, hey, I just got married, or I'm still single, I'm still 20 or whatever. I don't want to have kids quite yet. Okay, I get you. So, the next thing would probably be a sport. As you know, although he hasn't been part of the live streams lately, our good buddy Daniel, you all have remember Daniel here, who comes on the program every once in a while, very optimistic, calm individual, from, I believe he's from Long Island, New York, if memory serves me correct. He's definitely from New York somewhere. He's been on the program, and I believe he coaches volleyball as well as plays it. And that also is, I believe, connected to his kids. But you can see that because he plays a sport, he's in some sort of activity, and, you're not going to be able to make a big volleyball team of all foreigners, you know what I mean, or a volleyball league or whatever. It's going to give you the opportunity to, make contact with other people through this game. And especially with volleyball, it's nice because it's a sport where the rules are pretty obvious. You get to hit the ball 3 times. You have 3 chances to hit the ball over to their side, and they have the same opportunity, and you got to keep the ball in bounds. And there you go. So it's a pretty good sport because it's understandable. Maybe soccer is sort of the true universal language because it's the most popular sport on earth, and it's also pretty straightforward what everything is. Although there's probably more talking in soccer about and arguing over whether the ball was out of bounds or in bounds and all that stuff. But anyways, sport is probably a really good way. And I can tell you, as someone who plays, ironically, American football in here, that is probably the most, at my present state, where my kids are kind of, the one kid is a teenager, and the other kid is becoming a teenager, and they're sort of moving out of this. I've kind of noticed there's been a shift where when they were still preteens, there was still a lot of interaction with other parents, but now they've become teenagers or almost teenagers. That's a really dropping. I'm not quite sure why. I guess because they're becoming more adult in the way they do things. But so that sort of integration into Russian society through kids might not work if you have teenagers as much. Again, unless they're in the sports. But I could say the thing that where I feel the most like part of being really, really part of Russia, not being foreign guy, with a couple exceptions, is during American football. Because when you play on a team and you are literally now, at this point in time, the only a non-native speaker of Russian, you're in this huge organization where we have a first team and then the reserve team, which I'm a part of because I'm old, and the whole coaching staff and this, that, and the other. You're really deep in this, and again, if I was less introverted, trust me, I'd have all the drinking buddies I'd ever need. Because man, the defensive line can party. I'll tell you one thing. It's kind of interesting. Offensive line, one thing the offensive line is good at, how should I put this in a polite way? We're good at making children because every guy on the offensive line, except for like the two new guys, has like a bunch of kids. So we're boring. The defensive line, I think they have kids anyways, but it doesn't stop them from partying. Defensive line, they party. But anyways, if you were to ever really get into a sport like American football, especially a sport where it's very manly and you could be a manly man with other men, and that's that camaraderie stuff you need. It's a really good way to be integrated into the Russian society. So maybe number one would be through your kids, I guess, until they become teenagers. And number two would be sports. So it is, again, it's this universal language. It's the whole well, before France fucked it up, it was the Olympic mission, that we could get past our divide on this planet and sort of all rally around sport and this, that, and the other. Am I even recording this? Yes, I am. Thank goodness. I didn't know if I could remember to hit the button. But so anyway, so first we have, your kids, and then you have sport. Here's one where I've heard mixed results, and that would be church, okay? And again, because I've met a lot of people who've immigrated from Muslim countries, it would be then church or mosque. I'm just going to say church because that's sort of the default word for English. So, for the Syrians that have moved up here, you can just turn the word church to mosque, and it's basically the same thing. But with church, that's one thing I've really failed to do because there are none near me, and there's the sloth factor. I probably put a lot more devotion into American football than I do into the faith. But I can say that I've heard some positive and negative stories about church. See, because on the one hand, whereas with because even with American football, if you're going to join like the real the Eastern European Super League, everyone knows the rules. So even for a complex sport, everyone knows what the rules are. You can accomplish a lot even in this kind of complex sports environment with maybe really bad Russian, especially because people know the English terminology for a lot of stuff. Let's take soccer football or European football or association football, the normal default football for the planet. Like Russians, if you want to say it the Russian way, you could say положение вне игры. That's offside. But you can also say offside. The penalty kick is penalty, is what they say, and so there's a lot of the terms are like the same, or they sort of use an Anglicism and a Russian term for the same thing. So anyways, that's cool. When it comes to religion and stuff like that, no, because it is from the olden days. And, I could kind of understand how someone who just first comes to Russia, how going to like a church service might be a little bit much for them, especially when you're sort of out of the rhythm that everyone else is in. But I would say generally people are pretty welcoming. And again, church builds community. But again, with church, I've heard kind of mixed stories. With sports, it seems to always work. But with the church, I've heard kind of mixed stories. Or maybe some people have really high expectations about what they think church is going to be like or what they're going to get out of it. So yeah. But I would say, I'll put it this way, if you're religious and you start living here, you really should at least try to go to religious services of your religion of choice, because that's definitely a good way to meet people and, again, to integrate in the society, because you'll be sort of part of the team, right? That's a pretty darn good way of doing it. But again, the problem is it is very linguistically complex. You know what I mean? It is not something that is so universal, especially because Orthodoxy is really based in the old Church Slavonic sort of interpretation of everything, and so it is very Russian, and words are in Russian, and so Yeah, it's kind of like with Muslims. They have that one advantage that there's a, the default standard way of having the Quran being written is in the Arabic of the time, and so that makes it so a lot of expressions are kind of universal everywhere, but in Orthodoxy they're not. Everything sounds very Slavic and very different. Even all the Greek words that they use in like Slavic related to religion sound completely different, because I think again, people in let's just say England in the olden days, where pronounced, I think, the words the way they were written or the way they heard them, and that's very different from a Slavic pronunciation. So anyways, church is going to be probably harder, but it might be really worth your time. And also, it's definitely affordable because church isn't a paid service. So that's also something you can try, and I think that'll help someone integrate. Another thing that could or could not help you, but again, it's kind of stuck in this catch-22 thing, is because you kind of have to learn Russian to get a job, but to get a job, you have to know Russian. I know that's kind of a pain in the butt, but if you do, because someone just asked me how long it took me to speak Russian well enough to get a job. 2 years of Peace Corps service. That's how long, because after that I started and had a job here. But my Russian level was pretty bad, because I tell people to learn Russian 6 out of 10. I think my level at that time was more like 4 out of 10, but it still worked out. But that was back in the olden days. Maybe 5 out of 10. But anyways, a job can really help, because a job is going to force you to constantly have to do things and constantly have to learn new expressions and a lot of slang, because in the computer video game company that I worked in, there was all sorts of slang. Like email is called soap. At least at the time, that you always said you referred to your emails as your soap. You wouldn't say like, could you let me know when this is going to happen, or could you inform me when something's going to happen? You'd say lighthouse me or beacon me. It's kind of the same word, using like the word beacon or lighthouse as a verb. And so like kind of expressions like that I still remember to this day, but they're very not the kind of stuff you learn at a university or anything. And I'll put it this way, because Russians love to party, and there were a lot of really good corporate parties there. I think it was also a good chance, again, to integrate into a more sort of group of people or a collective, because, again, I was the only Western foreigner. Yes, I was the only one. So, it really forced me to get in there. Now, the opposite, so that's kind of the ones that came up in my life, because I'll put it this way, things that have helped me integrate, again, are, if we go back, probably number one was the kids. But again, remember, you're talking to Lord Introvert here, so if you, a normal person with hopefully normal human emotions, unlike me, and human desires, you'd be able to get way more like of this integration and make friends and have nice conversations than I do, because I'm kind of just a kind of don't talk to me kind of person. But anyways, the best was the kids, and then sports was probably second best, job probably third best, and the church, at the very least, converting to Orthodoxy is really going to make things easier for you in Russia, because you're sort of going with the flow of society. So even if you don't really go to church or something, I would really recommend, and there's probably some Protestants listening here, but guys, a lot of the reasons the West is the way it is because of Protestantism. If you like the idea of Christianity, but you don't like what happened to the West, then you're going to have to drop your Protestantism, or you're going to have to accept your ultra lesbian British the bishops or whatever that are going to convert mice into being Palestinians or something. Who the hell knows what they're trying to do with their weird black magic? But anyways, so I definitely would recommend putting your ego at the door and trying to get over your Protestantism, but that's up to you. So yeah, those have worked for me. What doesn't work, and probably what I've heard from a lot of people, the worst thing you can do if you really want to integrate into Russian society is be a lifetime English teacher. Because at least in the olden days, so maybe this isn't the most accurate information. In the olden days, English teachers, the students they taught, were always, people. Why would a young person pay extra money, or their parents pay extra money for them to learn English? It's so they can leave. A lot of your students, especially the ones that are willing to pay a lot of money, were all the people who wanted to leave Russia and hate this place. And if you work as an English teacher or language teacher in general, who knows if you're, French or Spanish or whatever the hell, you tend to get stuck in this world where you're not speaking Russian, and all the people around you only want to get stuff from you for being foreign. But then, kind of as soon as the lesson's over, or as soon as this person is kind of like bored with you, and you're gone. You're a one-trick pony, or a one-night stand, or whatever expression you want to use. English teachers really, and I've heard some people actually complain about this. They're like, well, I don't know, can't make any friends in Russia. Well, it's like, well, of course, because you're either teaching children or you're teaching weirdo liberals how to speak English better, and you're not doing anything related to Russia. So English teaching, I understand it's a way to make money, and it's a way to make money that's more accessible to a lot of foreign people. But honestly, guys, it is going to trap you in two traps. The world will definitely trap you with what we just talked about, how you're going to be not really involved in Russian society. If you want to integrate in Russian society and live here, English teaching or your native language teaching is a bad way to do it. But also it's a career trap, because once you teach English for long enough, you're kind of only qualified to do that and only known for doing that. So, again, I know at least 2 adult men who I consider friends who frickin' love teaching English. I can't understand that. I can't believe it, but I can only accept it because I know they're not lying. But again, not a good way to integrate into society. I would say that the whole expat universe can also be a trap, or sort of like a weird crutch. But I think the expat universe in Russia has kind of died. Because in the olden days, there were a lot of people who came here simply for work. They hated the place, and they'd all have these weird meetups of like British people or Americans, usually one very specific group. So not like English speakers, but like specifically Australians or something like that, to meet up and just bitch and complain about Russia. And I still never understood that. I think that seems to have faded away, especially because all those little cafes or clubs that were those things used to be have all changed ownership. They're kind of gone. So maybe the expat universe is gone, but the expat universe creates the same sort of vacuum that teaching your native language would do in Russia, where a lot of people then get stuck where they put the time and effort into making expat friends and getting to know them and spending time with them. Well, you're definitely not learning the language, but you're also essentially putting your time chips. If we only have so many magical chips worth of time in our lives, you're putting your time chips on people who are going to vanish. And that's kind of one thing where I made that mistake when I first came to Russia, is I kind of met a lot of really cool foreign people, especially Germans at the time. And within the process of like 2 years, all my really good friends were just gone. Or like 3 years, maybe I should say. So if you start doing this whole, like, let's have expat friends. If they're true expats, then they vanish. If they're people who immigrated here with their whole family, well, that's a little bit different. I think that's a lot less risky to try to get to know those kind of people. But yeah, the whole like expat, let's go out for beers things, everyone's buddies, and then one day this guy vanishes, and this vanishes, and this guy vanishes, this guy vanishes, and you're sort of back to square one, So I wouldn't recommend that, but again, I'm not really sure if the expat universe even really exists here. I get invited to stuff kind of like that, but because I am, according to my Russian fans, I am either I'm basically the intersection of where Scoofs and Sigma males meet. So I'm right here at the intersection of those two types of people. If you don't know who a Scoof is, it's kind of like a Homer Simpson kind of type of person, or Peter Griffin. But anyways, so yeah, so that's kind of my anti-advice. Oh, we speak of the devil, and he has appeared. Hello, Daniel, is that you? You want to talk? Hello, you need to unmute yourself.
Hello, hello,
Yeah, now I
hello.
hear you. Oh, fantastic. Okay. What's up, man?
No, I just, how are you, man? Long time. It's
Ah,
been a long
kind
time.
of having a rough day, so I wanted to go on because usually these live streams actually they either cheer me up or at least they give me something new to think about. So I'm kind of trying to pick my mood up here. But anyways, I wanted to ask you then: has volleyball been a way for you to integrate in Russian society, or was I putting words in your mouth?
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to touch base on what you said. I'm an English tutor. I've been since I'm living in Moscow.
Mm,
And, you're right. You're totally right. My day, all day, I'm speaking English with my students. I'm thinking in English at home with my children, which my children are bilingual, but we always speak English together. My wife is bilingual, so she can speak Russian or English with them.
mm,
But you're absolutely right. So what? And I don't really hang out in the expat community anymore. I haven't for a long time. I'm really trying to integrate into the Russian, society and lifestyle. And one of the things I did is I joined. I started training in beach volleyball
mm,
and playing and doing tournaments. And yeah, I mean, there are people who speak English that I meet, but it really helps for me to be surrounded by Russian people, and it helped me tremendously with my Russian. Really, I
mm.
mean, just listening and listening, and you pick up words here and there, and then you pick up more words, and then more words. So then you really start understanding um, a lot more and faster,
And you probably feel. Do you feel like you're just like everyone else in this volleyball community? Like when a tournament happens, you're just one of the coaches or one of the players, and no different from anyone
Yeah,
else. Well, there you go.
no different. No, listen, it's about 2.5 years now that I started training and playing in tournaments,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone knows me. We have a big community in Moscow. I'm in all the chats, and actually, I get many students
Mm-hmm.
through. That's another way of networking and getting students. But yeah, everyone knows me, and they know that I speak. That I'm a native
Yeah.
English speaker from New York. But yeah, they force me. You know, they force me to speak and listen, and even the trainers that I train with, many of them were professionals, so they traveled
Mm-hmm.
internationally to play. So their
Yeah.
English is quite good. But they just train in Russian, and it's really you know it's so helpful. It's amazing how much my Russian has gotten better in the last 2.5 years
No, I
by by being in a community of just Russian speakers.
yeah. Well, very good, man, and that's true with even with American football. It's the same thing. Is they're not gonna give you a separate lesson like when we have to go over film. Like you review film. That review is in Russian. They're not gonna have someone come in and give me a special one in English. You get one chance to listen to what we're gonna do, what the game plan is, and that's it. So, yeah. But anyways, man.
It's funny
Thank.
that
Yeah.
real quick. It's funny that you're doing this live because in my Telegram group, someone wrote in the chat asking if they know of any like American things to do, like country dancing or something. And I just wrote, I've been out of the expat community for a long time now. I'm living
Um.
a Russian lifestyle, and I probably should know, but I don't. I
Yeah,
can't
I
help you,
really don't know. Well, if do you know, well, yeah, you know who she is because we were at the one. Yelena Branson seems to. I've said that weird. Yelena, but Branson. It's hard to say the Russian
Yeah,
first
yeah,
name with the really Anglo-Saxon last name. She organizes a lot of like for foreigners, especially Americans, like all the American holidays, like your Thanksgiving, your Fourth of July, and some maybe Halloween too. I don't know, but she organizes a lot of that stuff. I guess next time I should probably share more information about that. But anyways, so there is something, but I think her focus isn't so much like on this expat world, but more like the immigrant world. Because it's more of an invitation to
yes,
people who are, because again, like I said, is it's not a waste of time to get to know foreign people in Russia who are just gonna, live here permanently. They're not going to vanish. But anyways, yeah. So, all
Yep. Yep.
right. Well,
All
thanks for
right, Tim.
calling in,
Thanks.
man.
Thanks.
Much
Thanks for your
appreciated.
time. Yep.
All right. Hope to see you
Yep.
soon, man. All
Ciao.
right. Later.
Yep. Ciao.
But okay, cool stuff. Anyways, that was a pleasant surprise. I was kind of hoping you'd be watching today because I haven't seen his name up there on the last few streams, and that worked out lovely. But anyways, yeah, the whole expat thing's weird. It might be dead. The whole like expat in Russia thing, really, especially with sanctions and not being able to get money out of here easily, it might be dead. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is a sort of expat universe, but it seems more like there's either people here on vacation or people who are moving here permanently, and that's about it. But anyways, we have a suggestion from the audience from Ruslan, one of my favorite people here. He says, "Drink more." Well, to be honest, let's take this kind of joke, and within every joke that's good, there's usually a grain of truth, and kinda. I mean, especially for guys, like, friends, the one thing I can't do is, I've kind of chosen, like, sort of with getting older and stuff, I could either do American football or I can drink. I can't do both. Like, they are very incompatible with each other. Um, but I'll put it this way. If you want an easy way to make friends in Russia or to integrate in society, drinking might be part of it. But again, you don't drink to get hammered. You drink for the whole process, to have, like, the snacks and do the toasts. And so part of being integrated might actually be sort of learning about how the drinking culture works. So you actually do consume alcohol the way that people do here as part of this big, long, magical process with all these toasts and well-wishing and telling stories and that thing. So that would probably help. And again, despite the fact that I am introvert number one in the country, I'm well aware of all that stuff. So if I did regain a passion for alcohol at any point in my life, I could get integrated with a certain part of Russian society very easily. Bakani, one of our regular viewers. Love you, regular guys. Ruslan is also regular, just to be clear. Don't want to shove him under the bus. Hey, Tim, how are you doing? I'm a Christian, but not Orthodox. Does the priest preach from the Bible, or do they just give some sermon from Orthodox traditions? Just curious, man. That I would say it's more of a sermon, like it's more the kind of speech type, or at least I prefer my Russian Orthodoxy in YouTube form. So usually what makes it to YouTube is usually when the priests give sermons and stuff. So yeah, it would be the more sermon-based stuff. In fact, you should look at it this way, that Protestants put a lot of importance on the Bible itself, as being the Word of God. Ironically, even though who compiled the Bible? The Orthodox Church. So that's one of those weird things that I don't understand. It's like, well, all those saints and men in funny hats from a Protestant perspective who are like actually doing the devil's work. Well, they weren't doing the devil's work when they put together the Bible, but they are now. And it's like, no. So anyways, that's one thing that kind of bugs me. But with Orthodoxy, it is a lot more about, it's a lot less about laws and rules and legalistically reading the Bible and sort of, I'll put it this way. There's people who follow the letter of the law and people who follow the spirit of the law. And Orthodox Christianity is pretty much all the spirit of the law, not so much looking for weird details or trying to convince yourself that, well, because there's this weird geographical feature somewhere, that means that the earth is exactly 8,000 years old, because I guess in the Bible, if we really do, even though the Bible never says the age of the earth, but if you sort of backtrack it and do research, the earth is like 6,000 years old. But it's just like, but that's not an Orthodox way of doing things. It's not where Orthodoxy isn't about this like legalistic way of trying to look at things. If the Christ did come to earth and die on the cross, and he didn't really mention anything about the age of the earth, it doesn't matter, does it? Maybe it really doesn't effing matter. There's a lot of things that are mentioned in ancient stories that are important, and who cares when the world was made, So anyways, Daniel commenting a little bit. My Russian is amazing when I'm drinking samagon in the village with friends. Samagon is the sort of like, it's like moonshine, the kind of alcohol you make yourself. Samo meaning self, Gon meaning like flame. So it was self-fired. Bakhani, in Russia, who integrates better, Central Asians or Caucasians? Oh, the problem is, Bakhani, that's a kind of backwards question because they've been a part of the Russian Empire or Soviet sphere um, since for hundreds of years. You know what I mean? Um, uh, you know, the people who are in Dagestan now are born and have been Russian citizens. You know, uh, I don't know. They're, they kind of are integrated into the overall Russian society, but retain their own distinctiveness. You know what I mean? So, yeah. I mean, if you look at our American football team, there's guys with like Armenian and there's one guy with a Persian last name, well, Iranian, I guess today you'd say. There are people who have the really stereotypical Muslim last names, the stereotypical Christian Russian last names, and yeah, and everyone speaks without an accent except for me. So, yeah, Bakani, yeah, you're right. I'm Baptist, and there's a lot of emphasis on the Bible, like Genesis to Revelation. Well, yeah, I don't know. People probably didn't come here to listen to theology, but one thing I heard from an Orthodox priest that was very interesting is because, like he mentioned how the Quran is that, well, basically, Christ's revelation was Christ himself as this model and the church, right? That's what the big intellectual explosion that happened after Christ died on the cross was his, let's just say, personhood and the creation of the church. Whereas with the Quran, it was ultimately, after the Prophet Muhammad passed away and Uthman like got all the people to compile all of his sayings properly, the revelation, the big explosion was the Quran kind of itself. And so he was kind of saying that this Orthodox priest that in a lot of ways the Protestants and but within the Quran there's a bit more again the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. It's like the Orthodox Christians are on the one end. He said Muslims are kind of in the middle. They do sort of a combination of both. And then he went into sort of like the Hasidic Jews, who everything is like to the letter of the law, to the letter. And so he really sort of was like Protestants in some way actually fall between really the way that like Muslims and like Hasidic Jews sort of view the world and like the value of scripture and all that, which was kind of interesting. So you could take that from, I believe that was Father Andrei Tkachev, Ili Tkachov, I forget. I used to know someone named Tkachev, and I've met people named Tkachov, so who the hell knows? Anne wants to talk. Tkachev is a weird last name, Anne. It has two versions, and I don't really understand the difference. Anyways, hello.
Hi there. Hi, Tim. Tim, I'd enjoy hearing about maybe increased cooperation between Christians and Muslims. Is that going on? Is there discussion about similarities in the scripture, or they actually accept the virgin birth and do cherish Mary. So is any of that going on in Russia?
Well, not on an everyday basis because it's a fairly secular country. People aren't really worried. Again, like that's a more Protestant way of looking at things. That these key theological issues are very important. It's like, no, not for the average person. The average person doesn't think about that.
Interesting. So there's no sort of knee-jerk difference between someone you might meet who is Muslim versus Christian. I mean, they trust each other is the word. They trust each other in Russia?
I guess I've trusted a lot of Muslim people with my life as in terms of taxi drivers and stuff. I don't know. Yeah, it's pretty chill here. Everything is pretty chill, to be honest. So, yeah.
Okay.
And people don't really discuss theology very much. I can tell you one thing is that last time I was in Dagestan, one of the taxi drivers, well, two of them were sort of like, man, we've got to turn to God. The problem is we've backed away from God. And, of course, they know that I'm not Muslim because of the way I look. But they were like, we've just got to turn to God, man. It's all one God, man. So there are a lot of people who are sort of, it's like, it's the same God, just different versions and stuff. So, yeah, things are not so... The fanatics are few and far between. But there's enough of them to cause problems. So...
Okay, so the kind of things that are going on in England right now are not
Well,
happening at
if
all. I
you
don't
start an
know.
uprising, you'll get gunned down. That's the long story short. No, I mean,
Okay.
serious. Well, what happened? Well, if you look, like I tell people, is watch videos about how the Russian police deal with like drunk people. It's the usual, sir, please stop, sir, please stop, sir, pull your pants back up. This constant, very polite and stuff. When it comes to terrorism stuff, they just liquidate. So it's a whole nother level.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All
Thank you.
right. And then the mute. Okay, let's see. Maybe there's someone else who wants to hear. Oh, he meant do Caucasians like Georgians or. Huh, so who integrates better when they come to Russia? Well, there's a certain advantage to Armenians and Georgians is that they're Christians. So they're always going to be a little bit more similar. But it also really depends on your financial background. Because if you're one of the migrant laborers, one of the things is people are like, oh, the little dick nationalists who are always afraid of, basically, well, they're too afraid or too unwilling to have kids of their own, but they somehow want Russian society to survive. But all they do is put videos online about how everything's awful and migrants are awful. Well, the thing is about migrant laborers is that you're essentially kind of like an indentured servant, and they tend to become more religiously kind of fanatical because they have nothing to do. Absolutely nothing to do. And they're also all in this shitty situation together, the exact same shitty situation, and so they all have to kind of band together, and I think it creates more fanaticism than there would be at home. A lot more. Especially if you've ever had the chance to walk around Kazakhstan or Kyrgyzstan, which I have extensively driven and walked all over those countries and talked to people. I think it's that whole migrant laborer lifestyle can breed a bit more fanaticism. So I would say maybe it also kind of just depends on your financial. If you come from Central Asia and you're coming here as kind of like a middle class person, yeah, you could immigrate real easy, So, yeah, unless you don't want to, which can happen. So, all right. Looks like that. Oh, someone is writing something. Anyways, does anyone else want to talk? I think we had a nice discussion about how to integrate in Russian society. I think the answer I gave should be at least okay. Long story short, kids and hobby. Kids and hobbies unite. Then again, I've been told that men are the ones who really unite around a task, and women tend to unite around communication. But if you don't speak the language, how do you communicate? I don't know. That's maybe more of a mystery. But that I can't comment too much on. I'm so curious what this person is writing, but now they've stopped. That's sad. Anyways, guys, if there's no calls or no messages, then I'm gonna bail. Oh, we have one more. Interesting. Is there any good in Vladivostok more than Moscow? I'd love to go there. Oh, there's a new topic I wasn't expecting. That's nice. Boy, I hope this water is fresh. Okay. Okay, comparing Vladivostok and Moscow. Why not? This is the whole reason to do live streams. You get surprises. Well, the first thing is that Vladivostok is warmer than Moscow. If you look on a map where they actually show the latitude lines go this way, right? Longitude goes this way. If you look at the latitude lines, Vladivostok is south of Moscow, so it's actually much warmer. So the climate is maybe something more like, I think, Oregon or something in the United States. It's pretty mild, maybe even Northern California at times. So that's different. Number one. Number two, so you get the climate, it's warmer. Number two is, depending if you are one of these people who loves the sea. I don't understand it myself, but I don't question it. Moscow is over 1,000 kilometers, I think, in every direction from a sea. It's a massively, and you can feel just how landlocked you are. We are on the Great Eurasian Plain, friends. We are on the Great Plain, baby. Whereas Vladivostok is, on the sea. It's right frickin' there. Just get on a boat and enjoy your Pacific action. So that also gives the place a completely different sort of vibe. Oh no, camera, lost focus. No, regain focus. There we go. So that's another thing. One other thing is that since we're on the Great Eurasian Plain in Moscow, everything is relatively flat. Maybe if you're from somewhere that's super flat, like Kansas in the United States, Moscow might seem a little hilly. But if you're from anywhere with hills or mountains, it's flat. Okay, whereas a lot of the streets in Vladivostok are very reminiscent of San Francisco. In fact, in a lot of ways, it reminds me of San Francisco, except the whole like gay bar scene is not present. Because you have this warm city that's on the Pacific Ocean, kind of, and you have a lot of streets that are at like a 20-degree, seemingly 30-degree angle. I don't think that's probably true, but trust me, you will have amazing leg muscles if you live in Vladivostok, if you like walking, because you're always going to have to be walking uphill then downhill, then uphill then downhill. Everything's with staircases and hills and ramps and all that other stuff. It's very, very uneven, so that's a big difference. Moscow is the most expensive real estate market in the country, and I don't see that changing at any point in the future. So Vladivostok might be cheaper in that sense, but like everything, the best job market in Russia is in and around Moscow. It's where the salaries are the highest, and so Moscow is kind of a stable choice. Also, like I've mentioned before, that I've seen, and unfortunately I've been really convinced that as a foreigner, if you're a Western foreigner, you should really, before you really, basically should immigrate to Moscow or St. Petersburg or surrounding areas, because it's going to be a nightmare trying to immigrate anyway. And it is a nightmare, and it's really frustrating. So, yeah, there's that. So, and of course, Vladivostok has it's connected to a different part of the world. So at least before the war happened, Moscow had your flights to Europe. So the one thing is Moscow at least used to be very easy to get on some sort of cheap airline, fly 3 hours to get to Berlin, something like that. Like basically, if you're a European, Western European, moving to Russia wasn't a big deal. You just pay what was it like at the time, like something like €100, fly Moscow to Berlin, and then go visit your family. And it was really easy for a lot of Germans and French expats and all that to kind of live here, but then go see their family whenever they want, and everything was wonderful. Well, now that's not an option. However, in Vladivostok, I believe for some reason South Korea and Japan aren't as fascistic about the whole flying thing, so there might still be flights to there. But regardless, it's more of your gateway to the Asian world, to all the Chinese airports, the Thai airports, the like I said, Japan, South Korea at the time. Where the heck else? Probably the Philippines. So it's kind of the airport there is a gateway to sort of a different universe than the one in Moscow. The ones in Moscow. All right, if that makes sense. So those are some differences between Moscow and Vladivostok to think about. Also in Vladivostok, they get more food imported from Asia, so you get more like weird Korean crab chips and stuff like that. That still exists in Moscow. We are definitely under the Asian influence as well in terms of food, but there's more of it in Vladivostok because it's closer. Another comment: the interesting thing about these nationalists is they appear to be race worshippers. They don't solve anything. In South Africa, there's an immigration of non-South Africans, but the South African will always be the majority. Up to now, they produce more than 2 kids. Just a third world example for these nationalists, both black and white. Well, yeah, again, Bakani, I don't want to get into talking about South Africa where I'm not really super knowledgeable. But I can tell you that you put a few connections together, and the people who claim to be nationalists, they don't have kids. They don't see the priority of getting married. They certainly don't see the priority in, especially in like Western countries, of like, yeah, marriage is really risky in the West. But if you care so much about your race and all this other stuff, shouldn't you risk it? But no, they're just not willing to. They just kind of like bitch and complain, and no, they don't really take any action. They're just sort of kind of like what did Nietzsche call them? We called them Untermensch, the people who don't have any destiny, and so they hate people who do. But they kind of behave like the bad guys of Nietzsche's philosophy. And so I kind of despise them. And you can see that also too. And then also, it's like, Christianity was evil because it was a foreign religion. We need to believe in the religion of our glorious Viking ancestors. And then everyone's just having raw anal sex in the trenches of the neo-Nazi Ukraine. You know what I mean? and just coke and heroin and all this other shit. So yeah, it's just a weird, strange priority. It's kind of a thing where you would think that it would be a movement that would bring the best out of people, and yet it kind of seems to bring the worst out of them. I don't know. So yeah, I'm not really impressed by people calling themselves nationalists, especially no kids. You're a nationalist. Don't have kids. Don't talk to me. I don't give a shit what the excuse is. Don't talk to me. Get out there and get to it. So, anyways, sorry that took me down a little bit of an angry road. Today we're trying to lift up the mood. So yeah. Anyways, I'm not seeing any hands raised, guys. This is your last chance of the foreseeable future because I'm going to be going all over the place. Okay. I guess that's it. We're all out of questions and we're all out of callers. So anyways, friends, that was nice. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Oh, nope. Someone's trying to ask me something. I hope they'll learn how to press the button to verify their existence. Is it someone who's watching? Yes. That's Jezreel. Push the button to verify your registration and ask a question because I gotta get going here, man. Are we not gonna do this? Oh, interesting. Wow, it sent me to the... I pushed the button and it sent me the admin commands. But anyways, I'm gonna get going then. Thank you very much, friends, for being with me. I hope this kind of gave you into a window of or some options about how to integrate into Russian society and some hope because it is possible. It's very possible. People do it all the time, but you have to put the effort into it. No one is going to integrate you into Russian society. You have to try to integrate yourself. That's kind of the main thing. And have kids and have hobbies and have a religion that involves interacting with other people who live here. So there you go. Long story short, it's not that hard. Anyways, friends, I'm out. See you later.